Hello guys, it is Sunday night, going through the food prep and laundry and preparations for the week after a pretty good weekend here. Got a good 5 miles in today, ankle's a little sore, tweaked it yesterday climbing, but all in I feel pretty good. I was thinking back to this time when I think I was 18, I think it was right around graduation, which I was sitting on the back porch of my house. And my grandparents had came down from northern Minnesota, and a long family friend of my dad's came, and this was one of the first times that they were meeting. And my dad's friend ended up being quite a bit older than him, but had been a portion of my dad's life, primarily ever since he started where he still works today. And so for the entirety of my life, basically plus 1 year, my dad was friends with this gentleman. He ended up passing away probably about 15, 16 years ago, unfortunately, and time flies. But it was this chance meeting, or it was this setup meeting where they're finally getting together. And I remember them talking back and forth, and I was right at graduation, so I wanted to go hang out with my friends. I didn't want to hang around with people that really did matter at the time, who I didn't really realize how short they'd be around. But I do know that my grandfather took a moment and told me, I don't remember if we were talking about precisely like the best advice that he could give me on graduation day. He's a very wise man, very well loved and respected man. But he told me that if I'm not careful, that life would pass me by, and that it comes much faster and goes much faster than I would ever believe. And about 10 years later, give or take, in the middle of my 20s, I remember sitting around my dining room table at my house that I had bought with my wife at the time and a close friend of mine. I had been a close friend for a very long time. And my view at that time was basically right in alignment with that mentality. I said, my thought process and how I felt was, you have these big major milestones in your life, but between those, not much happens. And it was a really depressing kind of outlook. They didn't think it was very optimistic. But at that time, I really believed that, because the routine of life allows the routine of adult life, I think, of standard adult life, your average adult life, allows every day to blend in together. You wake up, you probably do the same thing every morning, and then you get in your car and you probably drive the same route, or you commute the same way to work every day. If you're working in a work from home environment, your routine's probably the same every morning to get started. And so all of these things tend to blend together. They lay right over one another, and they're non-distinct. And so your time can just overlap and pass by very quickly. And the milestones in our life can be few and far between, especially the absolute major ones. Once you get married and potentially have kids, you probably have some promotions that might end up being kind of a big deal, at least in the moment. And you might have milestones for your children, but they're no longer necessarily your milestones. And so unless you're pursuing something and you're growing, I contrast it with your developmental years, your 0 to 18. Like, that portion becomes so distinct and has such large separations in your mind, where I think that you can remember the differences, because year by year, there's pretty drastic changes. As you go through summer break and you go back to school, you end up with all new classes, all new teachers. And that's all the way from kindergarten all the way through graduation, at least it was for me. And then on to undergrad potentially, which is all different and all variable. And all of this is pretty distinct, consolidated, concentrated growth in each of these years and each of these 6-month windows and 3-month windows. And as you enter adulthood, where you might learn through your career, you might have some job changes. Those are moments in which you might grow, and you can have distinct phases of your life. I had probably about half a dozen in my career. They're not the same as every 6 months or every year or every quarter. Things are a little bit different. and things change a lot more quickly then. Whereas now, I would argue, or in the bulk of adult life, things change much more slowly. And this is a big factor. As starting this video series, I've come to the realization that I've talked a lot about presence and focus. And this video series and the reflection of it on a daily basis and the reflection of journaling has helped me really slow down. And I feel less so that life is passing by so quickly, along with the races. I have big, distinct milestones that I've been working towards. I'd like to introduce that in pretty much every aspect of my life in a reflective way and in a way that slows down everything passing by, so that way I can appreciate every moment that life has to offer. And that would be the takeaway for tonight, is that understanding that if you feel that your life is passing you by, there are strategies and tactics to slow down. And I would question and put you to question and understand how you're growing to give you a different perspective over time, to give you a different mindset, and to give you some actual transformational change in your life. The challenges to your current beliefs and your current ideas and the current way that you go about living your life, and improving that regularly. And sometimes you might slide back, sometimes you might make the wrong choice and it's not an improvement. But it is this trial and error, and it's this focus and effort, and it is this intentional living that we must overcome the natural day-to-day tendencies of routine that can allow all of our time to blend together, to become non-distinct, to become one big blur of a life. And it shouldn't only be in major events of our lives that we can create distinct pictures and distinct times and distinct feelings and distinct emotions. We should be able to craft this on a regular basis to maximize and get the most out of life. That's what I've been able to work on the most in the last 45 days since starting this video series. It's been incredibly impactful for my life, and I'm going to continue to push that in multiple ways, continuing to reflect with a couple different strategies, one of which I already shared is journaling. I highly recommend it. I think it's one of the most important changes that I've ever made, is to get my thoughts out of my head and onto paper and to start to play with them and work with them. If you can connect and relate with the idea that life will pass you by if you allow it to, then please take some action. Start journaling, start a video series, start doing some of the things that you definitely want to, and you might fail at, but in those failures, you'll have the opportunity to grow. You can't lose if you don't quit. Have a great Sunday and a good start to your week.